Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the live stream. Hope you're all very well this evening. I don't know if there's anything really to talk about tonight because there's nothing really happening. It's been a very slow, slow news day. First of all, I want to say thank you very much to McCarthan. McCarthan, thank you so much for that super chat. Greatly appreciated. Yes, we're all here to revel in Boris Johnson's misery, because he is in serious trouble. Now, a lot of MPs have been speaking to the media and have been talking about how we're near the end. But before we get into all of that, I just want to say hello to everyone who's on tonight. We have Smurf, we have Akismad, great to see both of you. We have Killer moderating, we have CGM moderating as well. Jared, great to see you. Grubnub, great to see you. Audrey, great to see you once again. The Highlander, great to have you on. Alistair, great to see you. Mark Rumanen, Oraman number 3, great to see you. Andrew, Leslie, Smoo, who else? Young Ralph, great to see you. Job, Brother Benji, Derek, GJ, Madik, Nick, Derek again, another Derek, Andrew, Mega Harry Bomb, James, Jeff, Master of Disaster, Boris Johnson. I didn't know Boris Johnson jumped on. We also have Chatty Rat, great to see you. 1,000 Eyes, and so many more. Hope you're all very well this evening. I hope you're enjoying this Tuesday evening, which seems to be... This came, well, it sort of came out of nowhere. So there has been a lot of trouble brewing for Boris Johnson over the last number of days. But and I think it really started to go downhill for him when the chair of the Conservative Party resigned a couple of weeks ago, I think it was. And that was a really bad sign for Johnson. And now we have had two senior cabinet ministers resign, the chancellor resigning. Rent the wigs, James. Thanks so much for that super chat. Yes. And you're not talking about Michael Fabricant. Alistair, great to see you. General election in 16 weeks minimum max. I think I don't want to tempt fate, but it seems, yes, Boris Johnson is in serious trouble. Is he going to resign? Probably not. So I think it's going to be in the hands of the Conservative Party. They're going to have to force him out, because Boris Johnson is circling the wagons, and some of those wagons include Jacob Rees-Mogg and Nadine Dorries. So he's lost two senior ministers, and a number of other people have resigned, including Jonathan Gillies, Gullies, or whatever the hell you call him. I call him the parliamentary hooligan, or the hooligan of the House of Commons hooligan. He has resigned as was it a secretary, private secretary to the Northern Ireland Secretary of State, or Northern Ireland Minister. So that's very serious, because that guy was, the one who's shouting Johnson on in the House of Commons and shouting the opposition down. He came in 2019 on the coattails of Johnson, and for him to turn on the Prime Minister is very serious. But we'll talk a little bit more about that after. A general election in 16 weeks is possible. It depends on... The ball really now is in the Conservative Party's court, because Johnson will not give up. I don't see him resigning unless he's forced out. And that would be him called to the 1922 committee and them giving him his P45. But the problem at the moment for them is that he won his last confidence vote. And under the current rules, he's okay for another year. Now, some rebels are trying to change the rules within the 1922 committee so that Johnson can face another confidence vote before next year. But we'll have to, wait and see how that works out. Oh, it seems I have some buffering issues. Let me know in the chat, guys, if you notice any problems. Regan Ali, thanks so much for that super chat. Breaking news, Larry the Cat has issued an ultimatum to Boris Johnson. Either he goes or I go. And yes, I'll drop a number 2 on the way out. Larry will see out so many prime ministers. Just want to go back to Alistair's question, whether there be a general election in 16 weeks. I would say yes, if the Conservatives can get Johnson out pretty soon. But I'd say no if they can't. And it depends on how quickly Johnson can fill these cabinet seats, because he has to replace the Chancellor and the Health Secretary. And these are very senior people. The Chancellor, I think what is happening here is there's a move against Johnson. Not just these senior people resigning, but somebody wants to take over. And I'm looking at perhaps Liz Truss here. I think Liz Truss is looking to replace Johnson. And she's showing her loyalty, but probably behind closed doors, she's working with people like Sunak and others. But I don't know. If they wanted him out, they should resign as well. That would be the fastest way of doing it. But it could be seen as sticking a knife in the Prime Minister's back, and that's not good for their careers. So the one who sticks the knife in Johnson will not be the next Prime Minister. It'll be somebody who is pulling the strings in a sense, or organising the coup. And that's why I think it's somebody like Liz Truss. FSM is the dog. FSM certainly is the dog. And you say, thanks so much for that super chat. Terrible news. Madan, Nasty and Mog have not gone. No, they're not going to go. Priti Patel is staying. Jacob Rees-Mogg is staying. And Nadine Dorries is Nadine Dorries. If she left, then Boris Johnson would be on the way out too. She'd be handing him his notice, or handing him his whatever Johnson would receive on the way out. Gareth, thanks so much for that super chat. Great to see you. Bojo's feeling the pinch tonight. Pincher move. Wonderful. Yes. And, you know, it's ironic the thing that eventually will bring Johnson down will be people abusing their position, people breaking the rules. Max, the bookies have a list out already. Great. So it says here, let me do a refresh. The Education Secretary, Nadim Zouari, has been spotted entering number 10 Downing Street this evening. Zouari has not yet publicly shown his hand over whether he backs the Prime Minister. Yeah, it depends on whether he has ambitions of a career, a further, another position in a future government. Because a lot of the people who Max emailed you my phone. Yes, thanks so much, David. Check out your WhatsApp. If you're on WhatsApp, check out the WhatsApp on your phone. We've added you to one of our groups, so hopefully we'll get to chat with you soon about. If not, we'll find some other way. Don't worry. We'll get talking to you about Scottish independence, of course. Thanks so much for that super chat, David. Hope you're well. It says here, Nicola Richards MP has also resigned as Parliamentary Private Secretary to the Department of Transport. What you're seeing is a lot of junior MPs resigning as well. Magic, Johnson needs his sandwiches wrapped in a P45 and his bus fare home, big red bus fare home. Thanks, Magic, yes. Tory MP for Hastings and Ray, Sally Ann Hart, who previously backed Boris Johnson in June's confidence vote, says she no longer she can no longer support the Prime Minister. What's interesting about all of this is these people supported Boris Johnson until a few weeks ago. And now they're saying, oh, no, I can't support him anymore. It's a very cynical move. Like, Boris Johnson, responsible for the disaster of Brexit. He said, let the bodies pile high during the pandemic. Take it on the chin, let the bodies pile high. He's lied to Parliament every time he's there. He's done nothing really to help people during the cost of living crisis. He's been responsible for the handing out of contracts to cronies. And all of this, and now this MP says, yeah, now I have a problem. They're just career politicians. They see, okay, things are moving against the Prime Minister, so now I'm going to resign. I'm going to resign before he goes. I don't want to go down with this ship. It is quite cynical and disgusting in a way. Yeah, it's great that Johnson will eventually go, and that people are moving against him. But some of the people moving against him were backing him like 5 minutes ago. Hi Max, just switched over from Byline TV. Their coverage on this is shameful. Oh my goodness! What are they saying? Are they not talking about this? It says here, Jessica Elgott says, honestly, Jonathan Gillies resigning is arguably more damning than Sunak. Yes, I agree with this, because he was one of those who came in 2019. And he's one of those who has aligned himself with Johnson continually. And the fact that he has resigned, it's not like his minister resigned and then he went along with the minister. He resigned on his own, by his own accord. That's interesting, because this is somebody, an arch supporter of Johnson. You know, second maybe only to someone like Nadine Dorries. For him to go, now he's not resigning as an MP, he's resigning his position as a private secretary to the Northern Ireland Minister or Secretary of State, I don't know which of them it is. But he's resigning from that job. That was a job that was given to him by Boris Johnson. So that's interesting why he's resigning. But I think for people like him, he knows that there's nothing left for him, because if Johnson goes, he goes. He won his seat back in 2019 because of getting Brexit done, because of Boris Johnson. And if Johnson goes, there's nothing else. There's nothing really left for him. He's going to lose his seat. And I don't think he won with a massive majority. I haven't checked recently, but as far as I know, it's quite a slim majority. And he's likely to lose that seat at the next election. So he's probably thinking, maybe if I distance myself from Johnson, who's on the way out, likely, this could help me. It could stop some of the rot, as I like to say. Gareth, thanks once again. Don't think a trip to to Ukraine will fix this mess. That's no. I'm sure Boris Johnson has planned it. You know, he was like, Prime Minister, 2 of your senior cabinet ministers have resigned. Okay, get on the phone to Ukraine. I need to be there as soon as get a flight to Ukraine as soon as possible. With that sorted out, that should sort it out. No, that'll make me popular again. No, it's not going to work this time. You can't be jumping over to Ukraine every time there's a crisis. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you guys so much for all these super chats. So kind of you. Vladimir Zelensky is on the stream. Wow. Thank you so much for coming on. I know you're a very busy man. You should be focusing on more important things than the live stream, but thank you so much for coming on. Just had a text from Boris asking if he can have a spare for a few days. I don't even know how to take out a restraining order. Wonderful. Yeah, we'll have a look into it and we'll get back to you, Mr. Zelensky. So don't answer the phone. If you see a 0044 phone call coming in, ignore it. Don't answer it. Vicky, thank you so much for the super chat. They have some Brexit party lady on talking over everyone. Oh, great. What channel is that? Is that on the BBC? Is it? Probably. Probably, you know, they'll have these Johnson loyalists coming out going, yeah, we need, because for Brexiteers they need Johnson to stay, and I want everyone to bow their heads and have a moment's silence for the DUP at this very difficult time, because the DUP are now in a bit of a fix, because they had been doing a victory lap. Yay, Boris Johnson's on our side. Boris Johnson's going to tear up the Northern Ireland Protocol. If Johnson goes, I think they can kiss goodbye any chances of the Northern Ireland Protocol being torn up, because it's likely Johnson will be replaced by somebody who doesn't care about the DUP or is not going to use the Northern Ireland Protocol as a distraction. I hope that's the case. It's possible that they but yeah, the Brexiteers are probably a little bit concerned at the moment, because they invested so much political capital in Johnson, and now if he's going, they'll feel that Brexit is going along with them and with him. And if Johnson does go, you're going to see a lot of these people lose their job as well. Jacob Rees-Mogg, Dominic Raab, probably. You know, who's going to employ these people again? Nadine Dorris. You know, we'll have to open some champagne when Johnson eventually goes, because it won't be just him, but it'll be so many others going along with him, and these people will likely lose their seat at the next election and hopefully disappear from politics altogether. The Vertical Dave, thanks so much for that super chat. The level of debate was airheaded. Really bad choice of guests. I'm sorry to hear that. That's why we have to invest more in our Sunday roast. Political X will, if he's on. Hopefully Political X is on tonight. Trying to get the best guest we can. Magic, thanks so much for that super chat. There were talks of 12 defections last week to Labour. I wonder what the number is now. Yeah, and you're going to see. I think that's going to happen. I really do think that's going to happen, because there are MPs who are looking at slim majorities, and they think, well, if I jump ship to the Labour Party, I have a chance of holding on to this seat. Because also, if they do resign, there'll be a by-election and they'll lose the by-election. So for them, it in a sense, there's zero risk just switching to the Labour Party. At the next election, they'd have to run as a Labour MP. But if everything is against the Tories at this moment, they should win their seat. But you probably will see a few defections. 12 would be amazing. 12 would be unbelievable. Now, I know many people will say, why would the Labour Party want to accept people like this? But these are career politicians. They don't really... many of the people within the Conservative Party, many MPs, they're not there because they actually believe in Brexit or believe in Boris Johnson. They're there because it's a very cushy job. They started maybe out with good intentions to represent their constituents, but a lot of them there are just good there for the money. You don't have to work very hard. You have a good time at the chamber. Free dinners, free travel, free accommodation. It's quite a good cushy number, and for them, if it's well, I go through this door, I go through that door. It doesn't really make any difference. Not everyone is like that, but you're not going to see Jacob Rees-Mogg defect, for example. He'd rather sell off his nanny than do that. Well, I'm missing all these super chats. I think Bojo's burnt the oven ready deal. Big time, yes. There is a thanks for that super chat, Alistair. I think whoever's going to replace Johnson, I think is going to take a more pragmatic approach to the European Union. Please say you're pleased, Max. You've been waiting for this. Yes, I am extremely pleased, Rob. But I'm Boris Johnson, the Teflon Prime Minister, has seemed to have gotten out of problems like this. So there is a chance that he will try and hold on. I don't see him resigning. I don't see Johnson resigning. I see him trying to hold on. And the longer he holds on, the worse it is for the party. And the worse it is for the party, the better it is for the opposition parties. But it's going to be pretty bloody. They're going to have to force Johnson out, because once again he has grown roots onto that position in number 10, and it's going to be difficult to pull him out of that place. Thanks for that super chat, Alistair and Rob. Chris Pincher, you look like a lovely man, Max. Fancy a beer at one point. Pincher by name, man by nature. Thanks, but no thanks, Chris. Or if it is just the one, and then we have to keep some social distancing. Thanks for that super chat. A lot of interesting characters on tonight. Vertical Dave, great to see you once again. Thanks for that super chat once again. The last comment, and Vicky's, was referring to Byline TV coverage. Byline, I'm a big fan of Byline, and I really like the investigations that they do. I didn't know about this, so I will check out their stream after the live stream tonight, or maybe tomorrow if I have time to check that out, because it's unusual that the coverage was not very good, because they're generally really, really good. Thanks for that super chat. You're going to bankrupt me. No, Dave, there's no need to continue sending me a super chat. I don't want to bankrupt you, please, okay? If necessary, I'll see about sending some of them back, okay, I promise. Thanks for that. Matt, thank you so much for that super chat as well. Guys, you don't need to continue sending super. Greatly appreciated, but there's no need. Universities Minister Michelle Doolan entered number 10 shortly after Nadine Zawari. She did not make any comment as she walked into number 10, into Downing Street. Yeah, I think Nadine Zawari will be a big loss for Johnson as well. We have two ministers who have resigned, and then we have a number of private secretaries as well. But if Zawari went as well, I think it's another big crack in the dam. I saw that somebody was gloating this evening. The Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon was quite happy with herself watching the disaster from afar. Max, I think he knows what you're like on the baby shafts. Will Starmer miss the open goal tomorrow, FSM? I really hope not. But, things could happen tonight that Boris Johnson could be out. I don't think so. I think he'll be there tomorrow. Or he may find the nearest fridge and get the Deputy Prime Minister, Dominic Raab, to do the job instead. I wouldn't be surprised if Johnson doesn't turn up tomorrow. He pulls a sickie. But if he does, it's going to be very embarrassing. And I really hope that Starmer is, burning the midnight oil, preparing his attacks tomorrow, because this is a golden opportunity. You've lost two ministers. You've lost private secretaries. Starmer should list off the people who have resigned tonight and say, this is it, it's over. So we have, it seems, some new appointments. Steve Barclay appointed new health secretary. So Boris Johnson has appointed his chief of staff, Steve Barclay, as health secretary following Sajid Javid's resignation earlier this evening. Putin will be laughing. Yes, he will. This is all going to plan. It's so I think Starmer really has to really has a chance to shine tomorrow, and if he doesn't, it'd be a real loss. David says the longer Johnson clings on, the better for Scottish independence. Yes, I think anyone, the Tories are not popular in Scotland, but Johnson is completely toxic. And I've said before, I joked before about how, the independence movement could just put up posters of Boris Johnson. No text, no mention to SNP or independence. Just put up pictures of Boris Johnson before the referendum next October. If Johnson is still around, and that would be enough to win it. But I agree, yeah, the longer he stays on. Also, I think whoever the Tory is going to replace him is still... The problem is Westminster, it's not just Johnson, as you know. You know it better than I do. But yeah, just for those listening, the problem for Scotland is Westminster, it's not just Johnson. So even if Johnson is replaced by someone more palatable, it's the Tories in Westminster who are trying to destroy devolution bit by bit. They're trying to take power away from Scotland and bring it back to London, where they control the purse strings, they control the rules, the laws. They're in charge of everything. Yeah, Stephen Barclay as health secretary. No need for a refund. Thank you, Vertical. You rock, dude. Boris Johnson taxi to Ukraine, says Phil. Yes, it's getting very difficult. I imagine poor Vladimir Zelensky is. He's asleep at night and he hears a knocking on the door. It's that guy with the weird hair. Who? Putin doesn't have hair. No, it's not Putin. It's Johnson again. Tell him I'm out on the battlefield. Yeah, but he saw you getting into your pajamas through the window. I'm on the 5th floor. What the hell was he doing? Anyway, yeah, but Boris Johnson's probably planning another trip to Ukraine as we speak. Yeah, he won't be there at PMQs tomorrow. He'll be in Ukraine, fighting the war. There's a war on, remember, folks. So I'm just thinking, what is Johnson going to say tomorrow? So, of course, he's going to pull out the usual, got Brexit done. This is textbook Johnson. Got Brexit done. I bet Phil has got it and he's playing Warhammer tonight. I think he's probably cancelled Warhammer for tonight. But what is Johnson going to say tomorrow? Yeah, he got Brexit done, working on the people's priorities, the fastest rollout in Europe or in the world, whatever it was, world beating. What else? The typical ones. Levelling up. Dealing with the cost of living crisis, and then of course he'll attack the Labour Party for voting against Brexit, especially as Starmer brought up Brexit yesterday, where he gave a speech about Brexit. So he'll be saying how Johnson has, he'll be saying how he himself has delivered on Brexit and got Brexit done, while Starmer tried to block it 50 times or 48 times or whatever it was. How about a conservatism isn't working poster? Yes. Or Westminster isn't working poster would work as well. Got Carrie pregnant again. Oh, we have another update. Let's see what it is. Conservative MP Joe Giddon has reiterated her stance that the Prime Minister should resign. So she had supported She voted against Johnson in the confidence vote, and now she wants him to go as well. So that's unsurprising. So who's going to be the chancellor? That's the interesting question. I don't know if we're going to hear that tonight. So Steve Barclay, former chief of staff, this is sort of a spin doctor replacing the health secretary. And I've said it before. Wouldn't it be good to have a health secretary that actually understands health? What the hell does Steve Barclay know about health? It'd be good to have a doctor or a surgeon or somebody, or a nurse, a former nurse or whatever, who has worked in healthcare and understands the problems and is able to speak to the staff there. Steve Barclay, what the hell does he know about health? But he's the health secretary. But then, Rishi Sunak used to work in finance, but that didn't mean that he knew how to look after people during the cost of living crisis. Best form of attack for Starmer at PMQs is to list all those who struck by Johnson. Jacob Rees-Mogg Doris, not the best character references. Yes, he could do both. He could list off all the people who have stuck by Boris Johnson, and then he could list off the people who voted against him, who resigned. Also, some of the people who voted against him at the last a confidence vote, and also the ones who have resigned. These resignations are pretty serious. Number 3, thanks so much for that super chat. What a farcical system. A known criminal can't be kicked out of high office. Also the entire cabinet. Yes, but the problem with the parliamentary system is it's based on this idea of honour, the right honourable lady, the right honourable gentleman, and this idea that you would not break the rules because that would be dishonourable, and if you did something dishonourable, you would resign. But the system doesn't work like that. Under Boris Johnson understood, the system can't punish me. I can lie and Parliament can't punish me. I can break the rules and the party won't punish me. So he's milked the system and he's used it to his benefit. And the system is so broken that it can do nothing about it. That's why I rant and rave about the Speaker of the House complaining about people saying you can't use that term in here to refer to Johnson or others as liars, or as corrupt, or as charlatans, or as dodgy. You can't use these terms, but they can actually implement those terms. They can actually act those terms out. You can lie in the House of Commons, but nobody can call you a liar. That has to change. Once again, this 19th century idea of honour is no longer in existence. It's no longer valid. James, thanks so much for that super chat. Hey Max, weird question, but do you think any past Tory or Labour MPs would have a chance against Johnson? Any past ones? Dominic Grieve, I think he could have a chance, but he's an independent now, so he's not... unless you're talking about people who have resigned or were forced out of the party. I don't think anyone really outside the party would have a chance against him, or Labour. Current Labour MPs, I'm not sure. Do you mean to replace Johnson as Tory leader? Because if it's Tory leader, it would have to be, of course, somebody already in the party. The main candidates is Liz Truss, maybe Penny Mordaunt, and God forbid Priti Patel. Dominic Raab maybe as well. These are potential replacements for Johnson, but they don't command the support that Johnson had. And the more these people support him, the more they're going to be aligned with him. When people are going to think about them when they think about Johnson, and that's not good. You need to separate yourself from Johnson. You don't want to do it too early, because then you're seen as a traitor, but you don't want to do it too late, because then you get tarred with the same brush as Johnson is. fabricant. But former Dominic Grieve it would be a good candidate to replace Johnson, but he's outside the party. Priti Patel for Chancellor. She's good at numbers. Oh, we have some more updates. So Steve Barclay has been confirmed as new Health Secretary. Virginia Crosby MP has announced she's resigning as Parliamentary Private Secretary to the Wales office. So a lot of these ministers and secretaries of state are losing their private secretaries, it seems. Boris Johnson's response to Rishi Sunak's resignation. So Johnson says to Rishi, Dear Rishi, I'm sorry to receive your letter resigning from the government. You have provided outstanding service to the country through the most challenging periods of our economy in peacetime history. In March 2020, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I appointed you, blah, blah. Yeah, so he's just, there's nothing really here that says, let me see if we can open it. The last part, and we have begun to deliver tax cuts to families, including this week a cut of national insurance, saving an average of £330 a year. I have enormously valued your advice and deep commitment to public service, and will miss working with you, Boris Johnson. Yeah, it doesn't really. There's nothing really there. It could be. I think this is a standard letter that was produced. You just replace the name. Nadine Zouari for Chancellor of the Exchequer. Where are you hearing that? The Guardian doesn't have this information yet. Or are you making a prediction? Dear Rishi, F you too, love Boris. Yes. Lee Anderson. Lee Anderson for Chancellor. He can do a lot with 30p. Well said, Aki's mad, yes. And he'd be able to, point out the flaws in the Labour Party and their economic plan. But Nadine Zouari, I don't know if this has been, if was it Roisin was predicting it or guessing. Standoff in number 10, Boris wants Liz Truss to become Chancellor, but Nadine Zouari says he will quit if he's moved from education to number 11. If he isn't moved. So, that's interesting. So then who's going to be the Brexit minister? Who's going to, poor Maros Šefčovič will be wondering, okay, who am I going to speak with next week? I had Lord Frost for a while, and then he bailed. Then we had Liz Truss, who's not very clever. Then she seems she's on her way out as well. Who am I speaking to next? Lee Anderson for chef. I love you guys. May as well make it a comedy cabinet at this rate, yes. James Stupidity for Foreign Office. Making a prediction. Okay, you got me worried there because I thought that was going to be who's going to be the Chancellor? That'd be interesting. Liz, can you mention Liz Truss as Chancellor? Oh my goodness. I just want to take a little break from this just to hear from Channel 4 News about a bit more about this.
It's only 4 weeks, talking about short periods, since the vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister. Tory backbenchers then turned round to the cabinet ministers in the middle rank and said, it's over to you now. We tried, we pushed, but we didn't quite push him off the ledge. And today, two cabinet ministers, two people that Boris Johnson appointed as Chancellor, decided that they had had enough, and the letters make extraordinary reading. Here's what Rishi Sunak says in his resignation letter. He says, the public rightly expect government to be conducted properly, competently and seriously. And he's clearly implying that Boris Johnson isn't proving to be capable of doing any of those things.
What's interesting about Larry the Cat for Chancellor, well said, Attila. Yes, Larry the Cat would do a better job than Rishi Sunak was doing. What's interesting about all of this, I find, is many times when these ministers would speak to the media, they would, of course, lie. And it's not clear whether they were told to lie by number 10 or they were given bad information by number 10 and they didn't know that they were lying. Which begs a very serious question. Who is actually in charge? Are the ministers in charge of their departments, or is number 10 in charge? And number 10 is not just Boris Johnson, but it's the people around Boris Johnson. People who are unelected. Yes, they're running the country in a sense, but they're also in charge of the narrative. And that's extremely concerning, because a minister should be interviewed on TV, ask questions, and they provide information to the public. That's the way the public are supposed to receive information. Ministers will try to defend their position. That's one thing. But when they're providing information, that information should be honest. It should be true. But if number 10 are deciding what ministers will say, then the ministers are not there because they're actually providing real information. They're just a conduit for number 10. And there's a concern that many ministers were telling lies because they didn't actually know what they were talking about. And you've seen this how, Therese Coffey or also before Matt Hancock, they would appear on a number of different channels, Sky News, Good Morning Britain, LBC, and the rhetoric would always be the same. The answer to the question would always be the same. And the question may not be something that's within their competence, but the answer would always be the same. And you'd think, okay, that's weird. They've been challenged on this and they haven't changed their response. Either they believe what they're saying or they have been prepared. I understand they would receive a memo. This is what we're going to talk about. But it seems that it goes much deeper than that. That number 10, in a sense, is manipulating the narrative. Unelected bureaucrats, that were supposed to be removed post-Brexit, are in charge of everything, it seems. I'm not talking about civil servants. I'm talking about people, Boris Johnson and before him, well, around the same time, Dominic Cummings selected to run the entire show. Gareth, thanks so much for that super chat. Priti Patel would make a great chancellor, no? We're going to send the UK's economy off to Rwanda for processing, and we'll send it to Lurpak too. What's that? Yeah. So much to unpack there. To send the economy off to Rwanda. And it won't come back. It's going one way to Rwanda. There's no coming back. Thanks for that super chat. Truss just faxed her letter and set fire to the toaster. That'd be Liz Truss, all right. the infamous picture of her, answering the phone with the handset upside down, not realizing what, it's all just for show. It's not. There's no actual substance there. Magic, thanks so much for that super chat as well. Thanks to FSM as the dog. Civil servant on James O'Brien. All but employed ministers were lying against their briefs. Yeah, I heard part of that interview with James O'Brien, and the impression I got was the ministers are supposed to say something and they lie. They're supposed to inform the public and they lie. It's all about propping up Boris Johnson and the Conservative Party. It's not about doing their job as government ministers. Yes, they're Tories first of all, but they're also government ministers, and they're supposed to provide the public with information about their brief, but they don't seem to be interested in doing that. Anyway, back to, let's see if there's any more updates here. One minister, I think it was the vice chairman, actually resigned as well on TV. Let me see if I can find it. No, it's not here. Damn it, no, it's not here. Let me see if I may have it here.
Your thoughts on the Prime Minister tonight? Should he stay or should he go?
Well, I can tell you that earlier on today, I went to the funeral of a very long-standing councillor in my constituency. Much loved, not just because of his work as a councillor and as a mayor, but also because of what he did in the community more broadly, in family and friends. And a lot of the talk was about his deep integrity and what that means to people in this country, not just in my constituency, but across the country. And I think that what's been very sad over the recent allegations about the former Deputy Chief Whip and other things that have happened over recent weeks, that I just don't think the Prime Minister any longer has not just my support, but he doesn't have, I don't think, the support of the party or indeed the country anymore. And I think for that reason, he should step down.
You're a Vice Chairman of the Conservative
Well,
Party.
probably not after having said that, but yes.
All right, well, let's see if you retain your position. You're not resigning as Vice Chair of the
Well, no,
Conservative
look,
Party.
I think you have to resign. Right? You have to resign because I can't serve under the Prime Minister.
Well, so this guy resigned on live TV. Yes, it's Talk TV. Okay, we never mind that. But he resigned on live TV. That's interesting. He obviously had decided to resign before that. Is this another political opportunist? I don't know. I actually don't know this guy very well, so it's probably not best to comment. Gareth, thanks so much for that super chat. Chancellor Patel, dinghy business is booming. Dinghy business is booming. I think there's maybe a bit of a lull at the moment where we haven't received any more resignations yet. So maybe we can take a little break and we'll come back in just a second to see if there's been an update on Boris Johnson's stewing. If he has if he's been thrown under the bus by anyone else. The motivation for stopping no false evictions. Slayer Rocks, thanks so much for that super chat. The motivation for stopping no false. I'm not sure what that's related to Johnson or what we're talking about, but in regards to no fault evictions, I would imagine in some cases the landlords just want people out, maybe to sell the property, or to, in some cases what's happening is people are removed from the property and they try to up the rent. So they say, well, yeah, get rid of people, get them out, and then we can get new people in at a higher rate. Normally if you can charge somebody currently in the property more money. I don't know if I'm answering your question correctly or if you're talking about something else. Apologies for that. Thanks for the super chat. Thanks for the support. Magic, thanks so much for that. Breaking. Standoff in number 10. Boris wants Liz Truss to become Chancellor, but Nadine Zawari says he will quit if he isn't moved from education to number 11. Yeah, it'd be interesting what's going to happen. I would, Liz Truss should not be Chancellor. It would make more sense for Nadine Zawari to become Chancellor. I think he has more experience. Not that he has a lot of experience, but he would maybe we have something here, but I don't see him. I see him winning the seat, not the position, not Liz Truss. But then Liz Truss, the Chancellor, you would imagine is somebody who has some sort of competence. Liz Truss has no competence when it comes to finance, so why the hell would she be doing it? It's isn't it normally somebody who has worked in finance or in banking or something like that, or has made lots of money on the side? If Liz Truss becomes Chancellor, she'll probably rename the pound to the pork. Following pork markets. Pork markets! Boris Johnson told Sajid Javid he was sorry to receive his resignation letter as Health Secretary. In a brief letter, the Prime Minister wrote, "Dear Saj, thank you for your letter this evening tendering your resignation. I'm very sorry to receive it. You have served this government and the people of the United Kingdom with distinction." And also made some good money, for himself. Johnson noted Mr. Javid's work to tackle COVID backlogs and other plans for the health service and vowed the government will continue to deliver on them. "You'll be greatly missed and I look forward to your contribution from the backbenches." Number 3, thanks so much for that. All this was triggered by the right-wing media. Yeah, it seems... This, very, very well pointed out, this seems to have come from the Daily Mail. The Daily Mail ran a story a few days ago where they turned on Boris Johnson. I don't remember the headline, but it was the first time that they were critical of Johnson, the Daily Mail. And this is probably a decision taken by the owner or the editor, saying, okay, we're no longer supporting Johnson. And this was probably a green light for many MPs. This is really, really bad, because it's a case of not Johnson or his MPs deciding we have a spine or we think it's important to have some sort of honor, or we should put the country before politics. No, they're looking at, is the Daily Mail still on our side? No, it's not. Okay, get rid of Johnson. Okay, I'm resigning. I'm distancing myself. This is really, really cynical. And it's really, really dangerous for democracy, because it's not the politicians listening to the people. It's the politicians listening to right-wing media groups and people like Rupert Murdoch. Not in this case Rupert Murdoch, but people like him. People who run these newspapers, these right-wing newspapers, and they're constantly listening to what they have to say and don't want to go against that. They're the kingmakers, not the ordinary voters. Gareth, thanks so much for that super chat once again. Very kind of you. Thank you so much. Steve Baker for Prime Minister. This is the timeline of what's happened. Anyway, I want to give you a short break, comedy moment, and then we'll be back in just a jiffy with some more of this, more of this chaos within Boris Johnson's government. Hey.
Good evening and welcome to Inept on BBC Shetland, Scotland's hardest hitting and most unbiased political programme. Sturgeon has launched the opening salvo in our quest for separation, but the resistance to the empire of separatist lies is well underway. Let's meet tonight's guest, Lord Dribbling Wanker. Good evening, Lord Wanker.
Good evening, James. It's an absolute pleasure to be speaking to you.
Pleasure's all mine. Now, unlike most Scots who've sat back meekly and let Sturgeon and the separatists set the agenda, you've come out swinging with the reformation of Britain's political last line of defence.
That's correct, James. We've reformed the band better than ever. I can confidently say we are better together again.
Words which will warm the hearts of many patriotic Scots, I'm sure. Yet Sturgeon and her lapdog Harvey were quick out the gates. What's the game plan from Better Together Again to combat their bullshit?
Well, we have consulted the greatest British minds in Britain, and we've come up with a prospectus to completely destroy Nicola Sturgeon and her separatist cabal.
Can you give us a wee taster?
Oh, well, as luck would have it, James, I have one right here. It is completely thought out and very well researched.
Okay, time for a bit of roleplay, I think.
Oh no, I didn't think it was that kind of a show.
No. I mean, I'll play the part of an unbiased journalist. I mean, I am an unbiased journalist, and I'll ask you some questions about the prospectus.
I am ready for it.
If there is to be a second independence referendum, why should the people of Scotland vote to stay within the United Kingdom?
Once in a generation.
Sturgeon would say that Scots deserve a second chance to decide their future after Brexit, Boris, the COVID crisis, etc. Should they?
What's a generation?
But a lot has happened since 2014.
What's a generation?
But what are the positives of staying in the Union?
What's a generation?
I'm going to have to press you on that last question.
What's a generation? What's a generation? Alice Hamilton, what's a generation?
Fantastic answers, Lord Wanker. I really can't see how the separatists are going to be able to counter this new prospectus, but I think you need a wee nap.
I'm hungry and I think I went jobby.
That's all we have time for. Join us next week for our hard-hitting investigation with Neil Oliver and Lord George Folks. Are Gaelic road signs killing your children? I'm James.
What? That's like Gaelic signs killing your children. So we're still waiting for an update there. Let me see what you guys have to say in the chat, and if not, we'll move on. Donald Trump for Prime Minister. I'll play the part in the unbiased journalist. Wait, I am an unbiased journalist. Better together. Once in a generation, yes. I want a Wancore, yes. Someone needs changing. I'll come back to Boris Johnson in a moment, but I think it's just want to cover on another few stories before we come back to Johnson. If anything comes up, I definitely will come back to it. It says here, is it a U-turn? Was Keir Starmer what Keir Starmer has said about Brexit redress? So Keir Starmer felt so strongly about the Brexit referendum in June 2016 that he quit as a junior shadow minister under Jeremy Corbyn. A few months later, he returned to the Labour front bench as the shadow Brexit secretary and spent the next 4 years campaigning to mitigate the result, which he described as catastrophic, while at the same time retaining voters in the Red Wall constituencies. But he was a Remainer. He campaigned against no-deal Brexit and for the second referendum to give the people a confirmatory vote on any deal with Brussels. Yet in a speech on Monday night, the Labour leader said Monday night, the Labour leader will make clear that the party will neither seek nor to reverse Brexit nor soften Boris Johnson's hard Brexit by returning to the single market, including freedom of movement of people and goods across the EU. Is this a U-turn by Starmer? The former Director of Public Prosecutions has tried to maintain a delicate and diplomatic balance amid the divided views on Brexit within his party, its supporters and voters. Here is a quick reminder of some of the things he said. So Starmer, back in 2016, he resigned his position and he has supported remaining in the European Union. But this year and this week, he said that some will say, there will be some who say we don't need to make Brexit work, we need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Because we cannot move forward or grow the country or deliver change or win back the trust of those who have lost faith in politics if we're constantly focused on the arguments of the past. So what Starmer is doing here is he doesn't want to start an argument on Brexit because he believes that Johnson will win it. We know that Brexit is a disaster, but there are certain people within certain constituencies, and I've said this in the video as well, there's a limited number of people within a constituency that still think Brexit is a good idea. They haven't been convinced that Brexit is bad enough to support rejoining the EU. Now, it's important to remember there's a difference between people who think Brexit is going badly and people who want to rejoin the single market or the EU. There's a difference there. It's not automatically people think Brexit is bad, I want to rejoin the EU. It's a bit counterintuitive, but that's the reality. And Starmer doesn't want to fight that battle. So he wants to provide the idea that there's still that he's not focusing on the past, he's focusing on the future. But it's always about winning power. He has to win power in order to implement these changes, to eventually rejoin the EU. I think he wants to rejoin the EU. He wants to rejoin the single market and the customs union. But in order to get there, he has to win. And in order to win, he has to turn people who voted for Boris Johnson back in 2019 back to the Labour Party. Or he has to convince some people who voted Conservative for a while and are disenfranchised, or people who feel that they have no home anymore. They used to be Conservatives. They don't like what Johnson and the Brexiteers are doing. They need somebody more professional. They want somebody who they believe is on their side. And Starmer wants to reach out to those people too. And they're not happy with Brexit, but they probably believe, we need to work with it. We need to be patient. And that's what Starmer wants to do, I think. Will it work? I don't know. And something I didn't mention in the video is the Scottish element here, because by suggesting that Brexit can work, or that Brexit needs to be made to work, what he's doing is he's turning off a lot of people, particularly in Scotland, who would say, well, I'd like to rejoin the EU. And Starmer and Labour are saying, we're not going to do that. So if you're pro-European and in Scotland, then the only option for you is to vote SNP, because they're the ones who will provide that route back to the EU. Alistair, Labour is finished in Scotland big time now. I think the Tories, Lib Dems, will create one unionist party, as they are all small parties. I think it would be. I think what they should do is they would be better off running as independents in Scotland. Ironically, independent MPs. Because Tory is toxic in Scotland, Labour is toxic in Scotland, and Lib Dem is toxic. Thanks so much, Alistair. So it doesn't help your case running as a Labour MP, Labour candidate in Scotland. It's a struggle. They have, one MP at the moment? They used to have something like 40. The vote in it's like the support in Scotland has completely collapsed for Labour. I don't know if it's ever coming back. But in order for it to come back, you need to give something. You have to provide something. And if you look at some of the policies between the Labour Party and the SNP, well, the SNP provides something a bit more on the left. But they also provide independence. They give you this extra of independence. And a lot of younger people, and I'd say also middle-aged people, who used to vote for the Labour Party or who are considering voting Labour, are probably now thinking, well, what do Labour stand for in Scotland? Yeah, we're like the SNP minus the independence part. But a lot of these people would say, well, I'd like to be part of the European Union again. Well, can we get that with Labour? Well, no, not in Scotland. Can we get it with Labour in England? Well, officially, no. It's not like in England, where if you're a Labour supporter, you have nowhere else to go. Yes, in some constituencies you can vote Lib Dem, but the Lib Dems are not banging on too much about joining the EU either. But if you're in a constituency in England where the choice is Tory or Labour, and you want to rejoin the EU, well, who are you going to vote for? Well, you're going to hold your nose and you're going to vote for the Labour Party. But in Scotland, you have another choice. You can vote for the Labour Party, or you can vote for the SNP, who are campaigning to join the European Union. They're not afraid to say, yeah, we want to join the European Union. Nothing? No more updates? What the heck? Just a little bit on the list of people who have leave or remain. So here's a list of the people who have quit: Rishi Sunak, Chancellor; Sajid Javid, Health Secretary; Bim Afolami, Conservative Vice Chair that we saw earlier on. Jonathan Gullis, Parliamentary Private Secretary. Sadi Bhatti, the Parliamentary Private Secretary. Nicola Richards, Private Secretary. Virginia Crosby, Private Secretary. And Andrew Morrison, Trade Envoy. And then we have yet to hear from Nadine Zawari, who is probably looking for the role of Chancellor. George Eustace, Environment Secretary. Grant Shapps and Penny Mordaunt. And then those who are remaining in their position who have decided, no, I'm not going to resign. Of course, includes Jacob Rees-Mogg, Brandon Lewis, Kwasi Kwarteng, Michael Gove as well, Priti Patel, Liz Truss, of course. They're not going anywhere. Fearless Wolf, thanks so much for that super chat. Doesn't help Labour with the backroom deals with Tories up here. Better Together version 3. Yeah, it's this idea that, you know, you don't go and do backroom deals with the Conservatives. That's like, you know, maybe the local councillor from the Tory party isn't too bad, but this sends a terrible message, because what it does is it convinces people in Scotland that the Tories and the Labour Party are the same. Why would they go into coalition? Now, you can say, well, I see a more natural coalition would be the Labour Party and the SNP, because they have similar policies. But if you look at what's happening in Westminster, the Labour Party are supposed to be in opposite, the polar opposite of the. That's what the message is. We're the polar opposite of the Conservative Party. We're fighting to get Boris Johnson out. We're fighting to remove every Tory from their seat. And if they. How can you go into a sort of coalition with the Tories in Scotland? Thanks for that super chat. It blows my mind. Simon Hoare, great to see you on the stream, Simon. The Simon Hoare. At least if Truss gets Chancellor, we can get to see if Boris Johnson's Chancellor curse will continue. Fingers crossed. He'll eventually resign. For comedy, it would be good to see Liz Truss as Chancellor. Completely incompetent, but I think it would be. It's possible, but I think it's more likely that it'd be Nadine Zawari who will become the Chancellor. That would mean that who will then become Education Secretary. Thanks, Simon. Conservator just came online. Oh, what's this? Let me see if I can. No. Oh, what happened?
So.
Oops, something happened there. That's a problem with links. Let me see if I can do it through this.
So, Minister, we're being told that the Prime Minister knew that...
Okay, well, we'll come to that later. Thanks for that. I had lost the chat for a moment by doing that. Thanks, Conservator. I'll check that out. We can keep that for the end, definitely. Nadine, Boris, but too old. Nadine loves Boris, but he's too old. She's too old or he's too old. Labour in Scotland are just a branch of Westminster Labour. They will do what Starmer says. Yeah, and that's understandable. The same with the Tories. The Tories will do, the Scottish Tories will never really go against the Westminster Tories. Yeah, they'll call for Boris Johnson to resign or whatever, but that's if they believe they can get away with it. But they won't go against. They won't introduce policies that are the polar opposite to the Tories in Westminster. They're a branch, and that's something that the SNP can sell to the public. We're not, we're not dependent on our masters in Westminster. I'm surprised there aren't any more updates here. Nadine Zawari will be Health Secretary. Okay. So he's moving from education to health. So that means that maybe Liz Truss will be Chancellor. Whatever happened to Chris Grayling? Maybe could run for a cabinet post. Yes. This is a party political broadcast on behalf of the Scottish Labour Party. Cheers, Keir. Now we're totally effect. Wow, it's not fair. Trust Minister of going to Russia in an oversized coat and Russian hat, pretending to be the next iteration of Thatcher. Yes. It's died down. Boris has 2 more terms. Maybe, and I said this before, Boris will, he's made of Teflon, but there are scratches on the Teflon, it seems. It's not completely gone. It's not completely there, and it's not completely gone. Truss as Chancellor is desperate. But Chancellor is one step away from Prime Minister, so putting Liz Truss in the position of Chancellor is very concerning, because it's, that she's going to replace you. You would put, and she's the more likely to replace Johnson. It makes sense to put her in a position, demoting her. But Truss, Chancellor, Zawari's Foreign Secretary, Universities Minister went in after Zawari, Health Education, and not that Simon Hoare, fortunately. Okay. Zawari Chancellor. That's what I was thinking. But we still have nothing from... What's happening here? "24 minutes ago, nothing. That's weird. But Boris will help the country tomorrow." Okay, Zawari is Chancellor. Barclay is Health from the BBC. Yeah, Nadine Zawari Chancellor confirmed. So what's going to... Nadine Zawari confirmed as Chancellor, just on the BBC. Thanks, guys. I don't know what the Guardian has been doing here. They haven't updated anything. But it's not real. Carrie has started criticising the size of Boris's knob. Boris clings to power by his fingernails. A mere 2 years into his first government is something delightful. Yes. Close page and open page. I'll do that. Oh, I don't know what's wrong here. Anyway. So it seems we have... Okay, well that's quite old. Michelle Doolan as the new Education Secretary and Nadine Zawari as the new Chancellor. Michael Fabricant not getting any position, it seems. He'll have to remain a backbencher. For a moment, I was hoping it would be Liz Truss, just for comedy. But yeah, it'll be Nadine Zawari. Probably would do a better job, but there's nothing really he can do. I don't know his background. I need to check, but don't know what he did before. I don't know him that well, but has he a background in that? Anyway. Somebody says 50p off fuel duty tomorrow, he's dead to me. A fame where totally incompetent, yeah. It's anyway. Let's move on. I don't think we're going to see much more of that tonight. Talk about. I'll come back to that maybe a little bit later on. Okay, now we have finally from the Guardian, Nadine Zawari becomes chancellor. So it's a bit like Windows in Internet Explorer here or something. I want to talk about a little bit about the cost of living crisis. It says here, Tory peer says government has made a political football out of poverty. This is very interesting. It says a Conservative peer and ex-advisor to former welfare secretary Ian Duncan Smith has accused the government of treating UK's poverty crisis as a political football and lacking the will and ambition to tackle soaring hardship and destitution. Philippa Strode, who this week launches an independent cross-party commission aimed at funding practical solutions to poverty, said the pandemic and the cost of living crisis had showed long-term policy change was needed to transform the lives of millions of people struggling on low incomes. Despite one in 5 UK citizens persistently living in poverty, she said that the government had failed to come up with a genuine plan to get to grips with this, and neglected an increasingly impoverished benefit system that left rising numbers of people unable to stay afloat financially. We cannot go on like we are, she added. Lady Strode is to lead a high-powered poverty strategy commission which aims to forge a political consensus around how to tackle poverty and what the public should expect from a social security system, eschewing that it sees a partisan approach that has sought to divide public attitudes to welfare for political gain. Where I just want to get to the part where she says about that. Crabb endorsed Stroud's comments, saying that the debate over poverty in the UK had been too often dominated by attempts to exploit crude divisions between scroungers and strivers for political gain. Tackling poverty, he said, should not be about how we are going to get votes. It's something that should challenge our consciousness, our consciences. This whole idea. Thanks for that super chat. Whoa, I think I missed one. Let me just jump back up. No. Thank you so much. Meghan Markle appointed to Minister for Treason. I'm not sure whose side you're on there when you say that. If it's irony or what, but will 30p Lee be on her committee? Okay, how to deal with poverty? Give people money. That's how you deal with poverty. This it sounds quite simple, but it is simple. This idea that how do we deal with poverty? Well, we need to reform the welfare system, or we need to bring in these this czar to discover what people should receive and how families are able to deal with them. No, you give people more money. That's it. A UBI even. Well, okay, a big fan of UBI, of course, and most of you know that. But provide people with the means to live. How much does it cost to live? The problem is you have people who live in mansions who don't understand the cost of living, making decisions for people who are struggling to pay bills, people who are struggling to feed their families. It's... If somebody has to go to a food bank, that's a problem. Nobody should have to go to a food bank. You should start with there. Okay, why are people going to food banks? Well, because they don't earn enough money. If Bozo goes by Friday, will Pincher be Hero of the Week? Very good. Perhaps, yes. Yes, if Boris Johnson goes... I promise... If Boris Johnson resigns by Friday, Chris Pincher will be Hero of the Week. he will be the straw that broke the camel's back. Thanks for that, Killer. But back to this, if people can't pay their bills, you have to give them money. That's it. It's not about reforming the welfare system or increasing the taper or in universal credit or modifying, okay, which benefits should people receive at what time. No, you just give people more money. UBY. At least Rachel Reeves and Starmer deal with poverty in this country. Not buying the UBI thing, no food banks in Germany. This whole thing about food banks really, it blows my mind that there are politicians taking selfies in front of food banks. It's like arsonists taking pictures, in front of people planting trees after they burnt down the forest. And nobody seems to have a problem with this. This idea that there are charities doing the job of government. Charities should not be doing the job of government. What's the point in having a government? What's the point in having a Department of Work and Pensions if people are having to go to food banks to feed their families? And I don't buy for a second this thing, people don't know how to cook. It's just another excuse. The guy who came up with this or mentioned this in the House of Commons, Lee, 30p Lee, he claimed expenses of £250,000 or £200,000 last year. He's on a salary of at least £84,000 a year. And for him, he was saying, yeah, come down to my food bank, come down to my local food bank. So just, how can an MP be proud that there's a food bank in their area? Wouldn't you think an MP would be proud that there isn't a food bank, that it's not necessary to have a food bank, because people are living in a reasonably good position. There is a cost of living crisis, but most people are able to pay their bills. Most people don't need to rely on charity. Those who can't, who aren't working or can't work, there is a robust safety net there for them. We don't need to go down the UBI road, but there needs to be a robust safety net. There was a time when people were not able to work, they were able to rely on the social safety net. But that's gone now. He deserves a slap. Oh, we have another one, yes. It's Michelle Donelan becomes new Education Secretary. She succeeds Nadine Sawari, who will become the new Chancellor following Rishi Sunak. This will be interesting tomorrow. So I really hope that Keir Starmer is working late into the night, preparing his questions. Of course, Boris Johnson's not going to answer the questions. Boris Johnson's going to talk about how, we have these great people taking over. Ignore the ones who left. But it's he's going to be, of course, typical Boris Johnson. When he's painted into it, when he's forced into a corner, he comes out with we are the fastest rollout in Europe for the vaccine, getting Brexit done, levelling up, greatest number of people on payroll. Was it paying tax payroll figures? Was it? I don't remember. So many of these, empty slogans. Providing, was it the people's priorities, stuff like that. That was back in 2020, I think. People being homeless shows up our sick society. Yes. One of the things I noticed, I think I didn't see, I had a quick glance at the the Bill of Rights that Dominic Raab was pushing through the House of Commons. There was no mention of having a right to a roof over your head. There was no mention of a right to a meal, to food, to basic subsistence. Why is that not up there with freedom of expression? Isn't that strange? The government should provide you with a roof over your head. Nobody should be homeless. Food banks was austerity and benefits sanctions. I covered it at the last live stream as well. 20,000 police officers, 50,000 nurses. We got Nadine done. What's that, Bob? Would he fire nukes to distract the public? I hope not. I don't think so. I don't think he'd go that far. I hope not. Kate Ridley, thanks so much for that super chat. My partner works for a telecommunications company and they ended up with a food bank in the office. The company has denied it, but my partner sits beside it. Like one thing, no, I'm flabbergasted. The idea that there's a food bank in a company, in a private company, because people don't earn enough. Now it's not that, I imagine it's not, I don't know where you live and I'm not going to ask you, there's no need to say, but I imagine it's probably many people aren't able to afford their rent. So they're spending more on rent, they're spending more now on bills, and they're having less money to buy food. And the company, like how do you get, thanks so much for that super chat, but how do you get to that point? What happens? Somebody comes in one day and say, boss, can we set up a food bank here? A what? Yeah, a food bank. Why? Because a lot of people can't afford to eat. But we pay you good wages. Yeah, but the wages go on rent and bills and, staying alive. I have to put petrol in the car. Petrol is more expensive now. I have to work, but I have to find I have to find a way to feed my family as well. This is insane. In a private, I don't know if it's. I imagine it's a private company. It doesn't really make any difference if it's private or public. If it's a state company. But the idea that there's a food bank in a company. We've heard about food banks within the NHS. The NHS has set up food banks for its staff. Skytaker, Starmer agreed snap election if one is okay. 1 is a go. Sorry. Alistair, thanks so much for that super chat. Sky is saying that there's a general election on... Ooh. It says here from The Guardian, a snap poll by YouGov this evening found that 69% of Britons say that Boris Johnson should resign. This is 11 points higher than when the pollsters asked the same question on the 9th of June. The proportion who say Johnson should resign tonight includes a majority, 54%, of 2019 Conservative voters. Overall, among Britons, just 18% say Johnson should remain in his role. They're probably from the SNP. A third of the 2019 Conservative voters. Wow. Thanks, Alistair. Let me see if there's... Phil shared this. Sky News Snap poll, 69% of participants say Johnson should resign. Somebody, Kevin, who I interviewed some time ago, he says, Liz Truss as Chancellor. I'm off to buy I'm off to buy tins and collect rainwater. Although it didn't go through. Any minute now, Dominic Raab will explain that resign is a very strong word to use for two senior cabinet ministers deciding to step down. Yeah, so there's growing support for Johnson to resign. Johnson has to resign. Big question. Andrew Neil, Tory says, big question in Westminster tonight. Who's daft enough to become Boris Johnson's Chancellor? And, you know, how does this affect Northern Ireland? If Boris Johnson eventually does resign, oh yes, well said to James. James O'Brien says, finally, a Chancellor who understands the cost of heating stables crisis. This is Nadine Zawari, and I covered this before. He charged money because he has a number of country estates. He's not a poor guy. He has a few at least one country estate, and he has stables on that estate, and the stables have heated floor, okay, for the horses to keep them warm during the winter. By accident, it seems, he put this through as a parliamentary expense back in 2012, I think it was, or 2011. It was a little bit embarrassing. Heather, thanks so much for that super chat. Boris at 2 p.m. liaison committee. At 2 p.m. 2 p.m. today or 2 p.m. tomorrow? I imagine it's tomorrow. Good on James O'Brien, yes. He understands the cost of living crisis. Well, he understood it as well as the previous guy. I love some of these things. I think I let him shag me. Me too. There was a video. I might do it as a video for tomorrow. But there was a video of the cabinet office this morning, where they were all looking very glum, and while Boris Johnson was talking about this massive tax cut that he was delivering, and you know, normally what would happen is they would all start cheering, "Yay, more, you know, tax cut," and everyone was looking very, very serious and somewhat sad because they knew perhaps that, you know, the end was near. Let's see if there's anything else. Martin Lewis says, we've a cost of living crisis on a scale never seen for nearly 50 years. Energy bills will rise to £3,000 in October. Food, mortgages, rents, transport and petrol prices are exploding. The Bank of England today warned economic outlook deteriorating materially, and we've no chance. Well, now there is a chancellor. Now we do. It's Nadim Zawari. He's had it. He has a very tough job to do, assuming that Johnson's government lasts. If it does, I wish him the best. The country needs excellence in government right now. We must hope he provides. He proves to have a talent, ability, dedication, and integrity to deliver. Tory MP owns property worth more than £25 million. Yeah, he's somebody who can understand Yeah. Another pump for housing imminently. Yeah, he's somebody who understands the trials and tribulations of ordinary folk. Rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. It is. An absolute disaster. No, just on having a new chancellor. No, I'll come back to that in a moment. On the idea of a new chancellor, well, the Bank of England warns that economic outlook has deteriorated materially. The outlook for the UK global economy has deteriorated materially due to inflationary pressures, largely stoked by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, putting extra strain on British households and business finances. The Bank of England has warned. The worsening economic outlook has caused volatility in global markets in recent months, and more turbulence likely, the Bank of England said in its quarterly health check on the UK's financial system. UK banks, and remember, a lot of, there is an economic crisis at the moment. There is a cost of living crisis. It's difficult for business. For example, many businesses, the car industry in particular, trying to get access to microchips. This is a problem as well. There's difficulties with rising costs of fuel, and that's affecting most countries. But then you also have Brexit for the UK, so it's an extra yoke around the UK's neck that didn't have to be there. UK banks will need to set aside more cash to absorb shocks in the markets from next year, but are in good shape to provide lending support to households and businesses, it added. The economic outlook for the UK and globally has deteriorated materially, the Bank of England said in its latest financial stability report. Prices of essential goods such as food and energy have risen sharply in the UK and globally, and the outlook for growth has worsened. This is largely as a result of Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine and Brexit. These higher prices, weaker growth, and tighter financing conditions will make it harder for households and businesses to repay or refinance debt. Given this, we expect households and businesses to become more stretched over coming months. They will also be more vulnerable to further shocks. Right smack in the middle of, a government that is collapsing, that's trying to prop itself up by just throwing everyone and anyone at the problem. Boris Johnson should resign. The UK deserves. Look, I'm not saying that it means that there's going to be a general election and the Labour Party are going to be swept into power, but Boris Johnson needs to go for the good of the UK. He's a disaster. Whoever is going to take over, you need somebody pragmatic, somebody who understands the reality of the situation, somebody who's not with this dogmatic belief in Brexit. You can't fix a problem until you recognize that there is a problem, and a big problem at the moment is part of the government are refusing to acknowledge reality. How can you fix a lot of these problems if you ignore reality? I never expected Rishi to call it quits. Neither did I. I would have thought it would be somebody a bit more down the pecking order that would have resigned first. And I was expecting mass resignation. So I didn't think just two would go. I thought nobody would go or everyone would go. And Johnson would be left with just a few, like 3 or 4 people who, like Nadine Dorries and maybe Jacob Rees-Mogg. But these would be the only people who would stick with him. But you have a significant number of people in different levels resigning tonight, and that's damaging for Johnson. But he's not going anywhere. He's going to cling on. He's going to have a reshuffle. He's going to replace these people. He might have another reshuffle to distract once again. And he'll try to kickstart his government and struggle on for another bit. Nadine, I've got 6 months to live. There's a lot of people who voted against this and never wanted this. Yes. Someone just said 9. Yeah, Doris and Truss and Patel are never leaving. Pat McGraw takes Pincher to court. Crime Minister will have to be dragged kicking and screaming from number 10. Pretty much, yes. Johnson is not going to resign. He's not going to walk out. He'll have to be dragged kicking and screaming. Support for him is very low at the moment within the public. But the Conservatives, there's Klingons on the starboard. Mug for Prime Minister. Oh my goodness. So guys, we're almost at the end of the stream for tonight. I don't think we're hearing much more about what's going to happen. We'll keep you posted, of course, but I don't think there's... Very relieved that Brexit has united the Conservative Party. So we have a new, this is the new Education Secretary. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be, I don't think we're going to hear any more resignations tonight. So tomorrow is going to be interesting. Really going to be interesting for PMQs. See what Starmer has up his sleeve. But it's you would hope that all of this would just come to an end. The Johnson would be gone. Somebody else would take over. They would clear out the trash within his cabinet, and there would be some sort of attempt to normalize the situation, get back to the way things used to be. Or call a general election. This is Sam Coates. He says, 3 questions tonight for the new Chancellor. Does he continue Rishi Sunak's broad approach to the economy? Change position on Brexit? Agree to unfinished tax cuts wanted by number 10? I did attempt to ask. Yeah, poor Sam tried to. But Nadine Zawari, I think not. I haven't checked, but as far as I know, Nadine Zawari is a Brexiteer. So I imagine he's going to do exactly as things were before. So he's not going to change position on Brexit. I think he's probably going to do exactly what Rishi Sunak had been doing. He's not going to change course. For what? He might try to present some changes. He might try to, say, yeah, I'm going to do some changes, but at the end of the day, it's all going to be pretty much the same. Sunak is out, Zawari is in, but it's not going to really have any major impact. So guys, we're almost at the end of the stream. I want to say thanks to everyone who came on. Thanks for all of those super chats. Yeah, it's a bit of a downbeat. We're hoping that all of this would culminate in Johnson leaving, but I said at the beginning of the stream, I don't think Johnson is going to go, and Johnson isn't going to go. He's going to limp on for a while. You might see a cabinet reshuffle over the next number of months. Some MPs are talking about how this is Johnson really a dead man walking. He's weeks away from resigning. I don't know. Sky is giving Boris 2 days. We've been here before. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not so much the 2 ministers that resigned, but it's also the private secretaries. because some of these are MPs. These are MPs, and if they have quit, they're not resigning from the party. They're resigning from Boris Johnson, and that it is significant. Sky News says 2 days. Maybe they know more than the rest of us do, but I have a feeling Johnson is going to go on for a bit more than that. But we'll keep an eye on it. So guys, thanks so much once again for coming on. Thanks for smashing the like button. Thanks for all of the super chats and your support. Remember, you can support the channel further if you want to become a patron. You have access to Discord, and in a few minutes I'll be on Discord chatting with you guys about this entire mess. What it means for Johnson, what it means for the UK, and what it means for politics in general. Will we see Johnson out? Will we see a general election? What the heck is going to go down? So before we finish, we have our one for the road. So I hope you enjoy this. I'm sure you will.
So, Minister, we're being told that the Prime Minister knew that Chris Pincher had been found guilty of bad behaviour before he made him Deputy Chief Whip. No, that's not right. As far as I'm aware, he was not made aware of any awareness on his part of anything untoward. And that's the line we're taking now. But several people have now said that he was aware. The line we're taking now is that he did not recall being made aware of any past complaints, but now that he's been reminded of them, he does recall them if he tips his head like this. So he did know that Chris Pincher was guilty of bad behaviour. Well, that's a very loaded term. What is know? Can the Prime Minister ever be said to really know anything? And how can I possibly know what he knows? Can't you just ask him? Do you think I get a straight answer? All I'm saying is that the line we're taking now is that the Prime Minister remembers recalling that a complaint was upheld, but that upheld basically means the same as resolved. So that's all fine. So Boris Johnson knew that the complaints against Chris Pincher were true. Upheld, that they were upheld. Yes, and we accept that the minister meant no harm, although his actions did cause a high level of discomfort. Think of him like a big dog, you know? He's just trying to be friendly, but you do end up covered in slobber. Actually, that's probably not the best analogy. And yet, nothing happened. Something did happen. He apologised and we moved on. If the Prime Minister knew all this, why did he appoint him to a position of pastoral care? Well, you've heard of poacher turned gamekeeper. Why not pincher turned... no, that's not the line we're taking now. The line we're taking now is that the Prime Minister acted with probity at all times. What? We are fortunate in this country to have a sophisticated and robust system for upholding public standards. I'm sorry, are you just reading this? Open brackets, say something about your personal feelings. Close brackets, don't say this bit out loud. Personally, I love standards in public life. We're now hearing that several cabinet ministers are very unhappy about having to keep defending the indefensible ever since Boris Johnson became Prime Minister. The line we're taking now is that soon none of us will be able to recall Boris Johnson as Prime Minister. And in fact, we're just hearing that Sajid Javid and Rishi Sunak have just resigned. Are you going to resign? Actually, do you know what? Yes. Oh. Wow. Really? Yes. Well, thank you, Minister. Former Minister. Right. Next up, more on this, I expect.
Yes, more on this. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for coming on tonight. Thanks for all the super chats. Thanks to the moderators for doing a wonderful job. And I'll see you... Well, see you soon. See you next Friday. Same bad time, same bad channel. Take care, and let's keep our ear to the ground and see what happens with Boris Johnson.